Hello everyone. In this particular video, I'm going to be taking a look at the major changes that Cisco has announced in the CCIE certification tracks at Cisco Live in San Diego this past week. In this particular video, I'm going to take a look at the exam changes that are taking place, the format changes, and also the blueprint changes. One of the glaring changes is the change in the title of the popular, the old guard, CCIE route switch exam. That CCIE route switch exam, starting February of 2020, is no longer going to be called the CCIE route switch exam. It is going to change its name to the CCIE enterprise infrastructure exam. All right? So it's completely going to be a brand new certification, which will be based on newer technologies, cutting-edge technologies in an enterprise today, which include things like SD access, software-defined access, and software-defined wide area network. They have also included programmability in all its tracks. So all of them have automation and programmability by using different type of scripting languages as part of all the different tracks. So let's get started and take a look at what are these changes. One in the exam format, the other one in the blueprint. So the first thing is the change in the qualification exam. In the present CCIE, the way you would go about getting or acquiring your CCIE in any other track is taking a written exam, which was called the written exam for that particular track. So if you are pursuing the CCIE route switch exam, there was a specific CCIE written exam, also known as a qualification exam, for that particular track. By taking that CCIE written exam, did not give you any specific certification. It was just there as a pre-qual or a qualification exam so that you could attempt your lab exam. What they've done with that is they've integrated it into your professional level certification for that particular track. I did go over the specifics of the CCNA and the CCNPs in the previous video. You can take a look at it on the video channel, my YouTube video channel. It's available over there. But in terms of the CCIE, what they've done is, for example, let's say you want to take the CCIE security lab exam. What they've done is they have incorporated the CCNP security core exam as your qualification exam. So this is the one that now becomes your qualification exam. There is no CCIE written specifically there, which is a good thing actually, because what it does is now, by taking this CCNP security core exam, you get multiple benefits. Number one, it satisfies your qualification for your CCIE security. It gives you a specific certification that Cisco will send you for the CCNP security core requirement. It's a specialist certification. Security core specialist. So you get this certification as a bonus. Plus, in order to become a CCNP security certified professional, you would only need to take one more elective. And again, as I said, I detailed that in the previous video that talked about the CCNA and CCNP certifications in detail. That elective could be your firewall certification, maybe a VPN certification, maybe a certification on ICE, any one of them. That would allow you the ability to become certified at the CCNP level. It would give you two different, or actually three different certifications, because you would also get a specialist certification for that elective. You would be a firewall specialist, CCNP security core specialist, and a CCNP security. Plus, the same exam would also qualify for your CCIE security. They did that same thing for all the different tracks. So that would hold good for not only for CCIE security, they did it for CCIE service provider, data center, wireless, collaboration. All of the tracks have the same type of format. So your CCNP level core exam basically becomes your qualification exam for your CCIE lab. So that's the first major change that you have in the track. So that's what I'm detailing over here. The qualification exam is now the core exam for that specific track. You will get an extra certification from Cisco by doing that. The other major aspect in terms of the change is the implementation or the inclusion of design into this exam. What they've done is on the lab exam now, you're going to have a 3-hour design part or a 3-hour design component, which in my estimation is going to be just like your diagnostic part of the exam that is being currently held, with an emphasis on design. Basically, just to give you an example, let's say you're doing the CCIE security lab exam, probably about the best design for a particular requirement for the placement of firewall versus the placement of maybe an ESA or a WSA. Whether you want to put it on the DMZ, do you want to have a separate DMZ for the ESA, things like that. So on the design aspect of it, this does completely replace your diagnostic and T-shoot sections on the lab exam. So you no longer have the diagnostic and you will not have diagnostic and T-shoot sections on the exam. Instead, you'll have the 3-hour design component, more towards the low-level design of a particular network. Then you go into the familiar 5-hour config part of the exam, which is going to be very similar to the way all the Cisco CCIEs are conducted in today's day and age. Everybody okay with that? So those are your 8 hours for the lab exam. That's the other major change that you have in the way the exams are being conducted or tested, or will be conducted and tested in Feb of 2020. So the design component replaces the diagnostic and troubleshooting sections of the current versions, and it'll be based on low-level designs for that particular track that you're attempting. The configuration component will be a 5-hour exam, 5-hour section on the exam. All right? So this is overall, in terms of all the different tracks, what the changes in the CCIE. Now, in terms of the actual blueprint, the first CCIE that gets changed, completely changed, is your route switch exam. The route switch exam is no longer going to be called the route switch exam. It has changed its name into what is known as the CCIE Enterprise. Actually, the full name for this is CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure. All right? And in the CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure, what they've basically done, which again I detailed in the previous video where I went through CCNA, CCNP, and CCIE, they have the CCNP Enterprise. That basically acts as the professional level certification for 2 CCIE tracks. So when you take the core over here, that core will qualify for your CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure, which is more like your route switch, the wired part of it. And they have another CCIE that also basically branches out from the CCNP Enterprise, which is called the CCIE Enterprise Wireless Certification. The core over here will be the same written exam or the qualification exam for both of them. The one that I'm talking about over here, CCIE Enterprise, is for the infrastructure. In the infrastructure exam, which is pretty much going to be your new route switch exam, 2 major changes, which is 40% of your exam is changing right now. What are those changes? They have included a section that is specifically designed for your software-defined networks, which includes your SDA, which includes your Cisco DNAC product, along with the Catalyst 3K, 9K switches, and most probably ICE over there as well. And the Cisco acquisition from Viptela for SD-WAN. This section, both dealing with the software-defined part of the network, SDN, will make up 25% of your exam, which is a big chunk of the exam. You will not be able to pass this exam unless you have good knowledge about SDA and SD-WAN. If you don't, and you're preparing for the CCIE route switch right now, try to knock it out. I would still suggest, even if you pass the CCIE exam, these are cutting edge technologies that make you invaluable in the field. I would still pursue these certifications, go on and learn this stuff. But for passing the exam, try to knock it out now. It's much easier to do it now than it would be when these new technologies are introduced into the new CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure exam. All right? The other aspect that they're also adding is the automation and programmability aspect. This particular aspect is being added to all tracks. Each track, in terms of the specific scripting language that they're going to use or the automation mechanism that they're going to use, is going to be different. For example, over here I'm using EM applets or guest shell using Python, and I'm also using data encoding formats with JSON and XML. I'm using APIs for vManage, DNAC, iOS XE. This is going to be different for example, the CCIE security track. So the infrastructure automation programmability part of it, although it's added to all the tracks, it's specific to the tracks. This portion is something that is only added to this particular exam, which is the CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure exam. All right, so a major change in the route switch. As I said, in 2020, it's no longer going to be route switch, it's going to be changing to CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure. I should have put that over here. This is the infrastructure that I'm defining, because there is a CCIE Enterprise Wireless as well. That's one. Number two, the second one that there's a change in is your CCIE Security. The CCIE Security goes from version 5 to version 6. Not that big of a deal. It does have some changes. I suspect that they're going to change your FTD version to at least minimum of 6.3. They're introducing multi-instance, multi-context capabilities. I probably foresee integration with the Active Directory. They also have included SSL inspection as part of the exam. You will have more in terms of clustering and high availability with FTD. You're doing, although it's on the current Blueprint version 5, the emphasis on Blueprint version 5 is more towards the ASA. You don't have as much emphasis on FTD. Your primary firewall in version 5 was the ASA firewall. FTD was your secondary firewall. My assumption is in 6.0, you're going to have your primary firewall as FTD. ASA is going to be your secondary firewall. So a lot more emphasis is going to be on the FTD. Other than that, I pretty much see the same type of things that you have in version 5. Not a lot of changes in CCIE Security version 5 to 6. In terms of hardware, probably it's going to be the same type of hardware. Again, as I said, the version might change from from 6. I believe it's 6.0 or 6.1 right now to minimum of 6.3 in the FTD. That's where the major change is in terms of CCIE Security. Again, as I listed in the previous slide, there's also your APIs that are over there. Basic scripting, Python scripting using the REST API, and some APIs that work with DNAC. All right? So that's the portion of automation that is going to change from version 5 to version 6. Again, plenty of time if you're starting to study for the CCIE, preparing for the CCIE certification, plenty of time to clear it prior to Feb 2020. The major challenge that I foresee coming up over here is not the actual time to prepare for it. I see a big challenge in terms of getting dates, because everybody will be trying to take the exam before the change occurs. I've been in the industry for a while, and every time a version change takes place, most of the time there's a mad rush to take the exam on the current version. So I don't see anything different over here. If anything, it's going to be amplified this time around with the major changes that are taking place in your CCIE tracks. Now, same thing, let's go into the other two tracks that I have over here in this particular video. The next track that you have is the service provider track, which goes from V4 to V5. Again, pretty much the same things, not a lot of big changes over there. What I suspect the major change, although it's segment routing is still covered, it is being covered in the current version 4, but I see a lot more emphasis on segment routing, because right now, most of the time when you're doing your labeling, you're doing labeling using LDP. And I see that SR, segment routing based labeling, along with traffic engineering and the interworking between LDP and SR as major changes between version 4 and version 5 of the CCIE SP track. The other thing that I see a lot of changes that are happening is in the carrier Ethernet type of network. Emphasis on EVPN, different flavors of EVPN will be covered, and the hierarchical VPLS will also take center stage in there. Again, just like the other tracks, there is an element of automation. Again, automation over here is, if you take a look at the blueprint, is focused on Ansible. It does not necessarily do Python scripting. It does Ansible playbook scripts to interact with the iOS XE and XR devices. Again, a bit of automation over there as well. And the last track in this particular that I'm covering in terms of changes is your CCIE data center. Again, pretty much the same. Not a lot of changes over here. Maybe a little bit more emphasis in doing your L3 outs. Currently, most of the time, we're taking a look at EIGRP or OSPF as your L3 out protocols. There's an emphasis on using BGP as your L3 out. I think EIGRP is taken out as an L3 out protocol in the new update that came out for CCIE data center, going from version 2 to version 3. A lot more interfabric connectivity for your multi-pod, multi-site type of setups. Automation, which is still there in the current exam. Again, probably a little bit more integration over there for automation as well. Again, using Python and Ansible as your scripting languages, inter-site communication, Cisco inter-site the device, the program, the application, and the Cloud Center suite to manage your multi-site type of setups is also something that they have slated. So these are the major changes that I see in the different versions that have been changed. Again, just to give you a recap of the changes, what have happened, you have CCIE route switch, which I believe the current version was V5, has gone to CCIE enterprise infrastructure. .0. All right, that's one. CCIE security goes from V5 to V6. CCIE service provider goes from V4 to V5, I believe. And the last one is CCIE data center, goes from V2 to V3. My major takeaway from in terms of the changes is a couple of things. Number one, that I see as major changes. Number one is the exam format. Again, with changes taking away the diagnostic and the configuration portions, diagnostic and troubleshooting portions, and making it into the design, incorporation of the design element into your lab exam, and then you have 5 hours for your config, which remains the same. The other difference is the way the qualification exam is handled. And the major change in terms of that were dynamic or huge changes is basically going from the route switch to the enterprise level exams, enterprise infrastructure. And in that particular exam, the amount of changes that are there are significant. Again, my suggestion, though, if I was preparing for any of these exams, Try to knock out the exams prior to Feb, but at the same time, when the new classes, new technologies come out, I would highly recommend going through that and getting yourself upgraded or updated in terms of knowledge to things like the software-defined access and software-defined wide area network, the SD-WAN. Hope this video was helpful in clarifying the changes that are happening in the CCIE tracks. Hope to see you in one of my classes. Take care, guys.